in my national capacity. And don't worry, I'm not going to just read out what has been prepared for me. But I'm going to tell you what I have in my heart. I am a seasoned diplomat. Some of my colleagues say that I'm not just an old diplomat, but a very old diplomat, in fact. But for several decades, or I think several decades ago, and I believe it was my first mission abroad, in fact, I, in Geneva, attended a meeting where prominent experts were attempting to come up with a definition that they could agree upon of the terrorist act, a definition of terrorism. More than 40 years later, we're still at the same point. And if I talk about that today, it's because I come from a country which for a decade or so has suffered from the most ferocious and abject terrorism, the most barbaric terrorism. We were spared nothing. Assassinations of intellectuals, of women and children, nothing was spared. That is behind us now. And when we look back, we have a more humbled view of the issue of international terrorism. And the reason for that is that 70 years ago exactly, the Algerian freedom fighters were called terrorists, although they were merely calling for freedom and equality and self-determination. But they were qualified as terrorists, including here within the United Nations. And that is why I, with my experience, I was almost going to say my wisdom, I recommend to you that you look at things from a more human point of view. And in your attempts to qualify terrorism and to find a definition for terrorism, ask more questions than stating certainties. Often, not always, often, the terrorist act is an act of despair. When all the possible exit routes have been closed off, and the terrorist act generally is accompanied by, or is a suicidal act. And when that is the case, it means that a person, wrongly or rightly, often wrongly, believes that they're not being listened to, that they're not being heard. And what I recommend, apart from the humility and humanity with which we should be approaching this question, apart from that, I recommend that you bear in mind the specific context of a terrorist act, which is to be condemned, prosecuted, punished. But if we want it not to happen again, it is crucial that we look at the causes, creating this feeling of despair. I think that I have said enough. I have opened my heart to you and told you what I truly think about our approach. Seeking to define terrorism is something that we have tried to do and failed to do for 40 years, and we will not succeed in that enterprise in the next few decades either, unless we seriously and humbly and humanely tackle and look at the root causes of terrorist acts. And I thank you.